The morning sun peeked through the thin curtains of the small apartment, painting faint golden lines across the floor. Maria, a single mother of 2 young children, was already awake. She had been up since 5, quietly tiptoeing around the apartment to prepare breakfast and iron school uniforms. Life had been a constant struggle since her husband left, but she had learned to hide her pain behind a determined smile. Her children, 9-year-old Lily and 7-year-old Max, were still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the weight their mother carried on her shoulders. Maria worked as a waitress at a family diner in the city, a place where the smell of coffee and pancakes never seemed to fade. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. She didn't complain much. Complaining didn't pay the bills. Instead, she poured her energy into her children, promising herself that no matter how hard life became, she would make sure they never went without love. That morning, as she carefully brushed Lily's hair and reminded Max not to forget his lunchbox, Maria felt that familiar pang of exhaustion in her body. The long hours on her feet at the diner left her legs aching most nights. Still, she reminded herself that her children were watching, learning how to be strong by observing her. She kissed them both on their foreheads, walked them to the bus stop, and then hurried to catch the bus herself, clutching her worn handbag tightly. The ride to work was always a quiet time for her. She often sat by the window, looking out at the busy streets, wondering how her life had ended up here. Once upon a time, she had dreamed of becoming a teacher. She loved books, loved sharing knowledge, and loved the idea of guiding young minds. But life had taken a different turn. Marriage, children, and unexpected heartbreak had redirected her path. Now, instead of a classroom, her workplace was a crowded diner where people rarely noticed her beyond the tray in her hands. When Maria arrived at the diner, she tied her apron around her waist, tucked her hair into a neat bun, and plastered on the smile she wore every day. Her co-workers greeted her warmly, they all knew she was dependable. The manager, Mr. Kelly, often praised her for never missing a shift, even when she was clearly tired. She simply nodded and carried on. Work was work, and for her, it was survival. The morning rush began almost immediately. Families stopped in for breakfast, businessmen ordered coffee to go, and regulars took their usual seats at the counter. Maria moved gracefully between tables, balancing plates, filling cups, and remembering everyone's orders with ease. She had mastered the art of being quick, polite, and invisible at the same time. Customers rarely asked about her life, and she rarely offered details. But inside, she sometimes longed for someone to see beyond the apron, beyond the routine, and notice her as a person. Between customers, she would sometimes sneak glances at her phone, checking for texts from Lily's teacher or reminders about Max's asthma medicine. Being a single mom meant she could never truly switch off. Even while pouring coffee, her mind was half at home. Would the kids be okay today? Would the babysitter show up on time after school? Could she stretch her paycheck far enough this week to cover both rent and groceries? These were the questions that never left her. By mid-morning, her energy began to wane. The ache in her back grew stronger, and she allowed herself a quick moment to lean against the counter. Her coworker noticed and whispered, "You okay?" Maria just nodded. She always nodded. Admitting weakness wasn't an option. If she crumbled, who would take care of the children? So, she wiped her hands, picked up another tray, and stepped back onto the floor. As the hours rolled by, Maria's smile never faded, even though inside she felt the weight of the world pressing down. She had developed a way of finding small joys in her day, like when a child at one of the tables waved at her, or when a kind customer left a little extra tip. Those moments reminded her that kindness still existed, even in small doses. When her lunch break finally came, Maria sat at the back of the diner with a simple sandwich she had packed from home. She couldn't afford to buy meals at the restaurant every day, so she always brought something small from the apartment. As she ate, she scrolled through the photos on her phone, pictures of Lily's last drawing, Max's toothless grin after losing another baby tooth. Those images gave her the strength to push through another shift. The afternoon crowd was heavier, with groups of students, workers, and families pouring in. Maria kept moving, her tired feet carrying her from table to table. She thought about how her children were doing at school right then. Lily was probably drawing, lost in her colorful imagination. Max was likely playing with his friends during recess, his laughter filling the playground. Just thinking of them brought a soft smile to her lips. Yet, beneath the smile, she couldn't ignore the constant worry. What if she couldn't keep up with rent next month? What if her car, which had been making strange noises, finally broke down? Every small challenge felt like a mountain, but she kept climbing. She knew her kids depended on her courage, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. As the evening shift crept closer, Maria's body screamed for rest, but she pushed on. The diner lights glowed warmly, and the smell of freshly baked pies filled the air. She reminded herself that each hour she worked was another step toward providing for her family. She thought about the promises she made to herself, to keep going, to never give up, and to create a better future for her children, no matter how hard it was for her. In the quiet moments between tables, Maria sometimes dreamed about a miracle, something or someone who might change her life, even in a small way. She didn't expect it, but she couldn't help wishing. Maybe one day, things would get a little easier. Maybe one day, someone would notice the effort she gave every single day. That night, as she cleaned up after the last customers left, Maria felt the usual mixture of relief and fatigue. She knew tomorrow would be the same: early mornings, long hours, and constant worry. But she also knew her children would run to hug her when she got home, and that made every ache in her body worth it. Little did she know, the next day at the diner would be different. Someone unexpected would walk in. Someone whose kindness would touch her heart so deeply that it would leave her in tears. The next day began like most mornings for Maria, with the familiar sound of her alarm clock buzzing before dawn. She turned it off quickly so it wouldn't wake the kids and quietly began her routine. She brewed a small pot of coffee, just enough to give her the strength to move through the early hours. As she sipped from her chipped mug, she thought about the long shift ahead of her at the diner. It was going to be another busy day, but she reminded herself that every hour she worked meant food on the table and clothes for her children. After waking Lily and Max, she got them ready for school. They were groggy at first, but soon their playful chatter filled the small apartment. Lily asked her mom if she could join the art club after school, while Max proudly announced he would be the goalie in a playground soccer game. Maria smiled, encouraging them both. She didn't want them to feel the weight she carried, she wanted them to believe their childhood was safe, full of hope, and bright possibilities. She walked them to the bus stop, hugging them tightly before watching the bus drive away. For a brief moment, she stood there, breathing in the cool morning air, wishing she could freeze time. Her children were growing so fast, and she didn't want to miss any part of it. But duty called, and she quickly headed toward her own bus stop, clutching her bag and adjusting her apron folded neatly inside. By the time she arrived at the diner, the morning rush had already begun. The place buzzed with chatter, clinking dishes, and the constant hiss of coffee machines. Maria tied her apron and joined the flow, balancing trays and greeting customers with her usual warm smile. She didn't expect anything different from this day, just another long stretch of serving strangers and wiping tables. Around mid-morning, when the diner was especially busy, the front door swung open, and the atmosphere seemed to change. A tall man ducked slightly to step inside, and people immediately began whispering. Heads turned, and eyes widened. Maria glanced toward the door and froze for a second. Standing there was Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball legend everyone knew. His height made him impossible to miss, and his presence filled the room. The other waitresses exchanged quick looks of excitement, some whispering and pointing discreetly. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen a celebrity in person, let alone one as famous as Shaq. For a moment, she thought surely someone else would serve him. But as luck would have it, the hostess directed him toward a booth in Maria's section. Her hands trembled slightly as she grabbed her notepad and walked over. "Good morning, sir," she said softly, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Welcome. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Shaq smiled warmly, his deep voice filling the space. "Good morning. Just some water, please." "Thank you." Maria nodded, scribbling the order down though she didn't need to. She hurried to the counter, trying to calm her racing heart. Her co-workers watched with wide eyes, some clearly envious, others amused. "Lucky you," one of them whispered with a grin. Maria just smiled nervously and brought the glass of water back to the booth. When she set it down, Shaq looked up at her kindly. "What's your name?" he asked. Maria blinked in surprise. Most customers never asked. "It's Maria," she said quietly. "Well, thank you, Maria," he replied with a nod. "I appreciate you." The words were simple, but they carried weight. She wasn't used to being noticed, let alone appreciated, by someone of his stature. For a brief moment, she felt seen not just as a waitress, but as a person. She handed him a menu, and he glanced through it. "What do you recommend?" he asked, his tone casual, as though they were old friends. Maria thought quickly. "The pancakes are popular," she said. "And the omelette is a favorite too." Shaq chuckled. "I'll take both then," he said, folding the menu. Maria wrote it down and walked away, her heart still fluttering. She couldn't believe she was serving Shaquille O'Neal. Around her, customers whispered and tried not to stare, though some discreetly took photos with their phones. The diner buzzed with excitement, but Shaq seemed calm, just another customer enjoying a quiet morning meal. As Maria worked, she kept glancing at his table. She noticed how polite he was, thanking her each time she brought something to the table. When she refilled his water, he asked her a simple question: "How long have you been working here?" Maria hesitated before answering. "About 6 years now," she said. "It helps me take care of my kids." Something in his expression softened. "Kids, huh? That's wonderful. How old are they?" Maria found herself opening up, even though she usually kept her personal life private at work. "My daughter is 9, and my son is 7, she said with a small smile. "They're my world." Shaq nodded thoughtfully, his eyes kind. "Sounds like you're a strong mom." The words made Maria's chest tighten. Strong people rarely said that to her. They just assumed she could handle everything because she never complained. But hearing it from him, a man admired by millions, touched her deeply. She quickly excused herself to attend to other customers, not wanting him to see the emotions welling up in her eyes. Back at the counter, her co-workers teased her lightly. "Looks like you've made a friend," one joked. Maria just laughed it off, though inside she felt a strange mix of nerves and gratitude. When Shaq's food was ready, she carried the plates carefully to his table. "Here you go, sir," she said, placing the fluffy pancakes and the steaming omelette in front of him. "Thank you, Maria," he said again with genuine warmth. She stepped back, watching him dig in with a smile. Despite the attention from others, he didn't act like he was above anyone. He was humble, friendly, and approachable. For Maria, that meant more than she could express throughout his meal. He continued to chat with her in small bursts, asking about her shift, her kids, and even recommending she try a new book he had recently read. Each interaction made her feel lighter, as if someone had finally lifted a small part of the heavy load she carried daily. When he finished, Maria cleared the table and brought the check. She expected the moment to end there, like it did with every other customer. But as she turned to leave, Shaq paused, pulled out a pen, and wrote something on a napkin. He folded it neatly and tucked it under the bill. Maria didn't notice right away. She was busy with another table when he stood, thanked her once more, and gave a polite wave before walking out. His departure left the diner buzzing, customers whispering about the celebrity who had just dined among them. Maria returned to his table a few minutes later, picking up the bill and napkin. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Alongside a very generous tip was a handwritten note from Shaquille O'Neal. She read the first line and froze, her eyes beginning to water. The words were simple but powerful, written with sincerity. Her hands shook as she held the napkin, the reality of the moment sinking in. For years she had served countless people, most barely glancing her way. But today was different. Today, someone had not only noticed her but had taken the time to remind her of her worth. She quickly pressed the napkin to her chest, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't yet put into words. She didn't care about the whispers around her, or that her co-workers were watching curiously. For the first time in a long while, Maria felt truly seen. Little did she know, this note would change more than just her day. It would change how she looked at herself, her struggles, and her strength as a mother. Maria stood frozen for a moment with the napkin in her hand. The diner was still busy around her, waitresses moving quickly, coffee being poured, forks clinking against plates, but all the noise faded into the background. Her eyes were locked on the words written in Shaquille O'Neal's handwriting. It wasn't just a thank you. It was more. The note said, "Maria, keep your head high. You are stronger than you think, and your children are lucky to have a mother like you. Don't give up, you're doing amazing. Love, Shaq." Her chest tightened, and her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. She pressed the napkin to her lips and took a shaky breath. For so long, she had been moving through her days quietly, unnoticed, carrying her burdens without complaint. To have someone, especially someone so well known and admired, see her for who she truly was, it felt overwhelming. She quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand and tried to steady herself before anyone noticed. But her co-worker Jenny, who had been refilling coffee nearby, caught sight of her face. "Maria," Jenny whispered gently, "are you okay?" Maria nodded quickly, tucking the napkin into her pocket as if it were a treasure. "I'm fine," she said softly, though her voice trembled. Jenny gave her a small smile, sensing there was more to the story, but didn't press further. For the rest of her shift, Maria carried an unusual lightness in her step. The long hours didn't feel as heavy, and even though her back ached as usual, her heart felt stronger. Every time she slipped her hand into her pocket and felt the folded napkin, she reminded herself that someone believed in her. When her shift ended, she changed out of her apron, picked up her bag, and headed for the bus stop. The evening air was cool, and she pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. As she rode the bus home, she kept looking down at the napkin, carefully unfolding it again and again, reading the words over and over. She smiled through her tears, thinking about how she would share this moment with her children. When she walked into the apartment, Lily and Max ran to greet her, their little arms wrapping tightly around her waist. "Mommy, you're home!" Max shouted, his face lighting up. Lily hugged her just as fiercely, chattering about her art project at school. Maria knelt down, holding both of them close. "I missed you," she whispered. After dinner, when the kids were settled at the table working on their homework, Maria pulled out the napkin. "I want to show you something special," she said gently. The children leaned in curiously as she unfolded it and placed it on the table. Their eyes widened as she explained who had written it. "Do you know who Shaquille O'Neal is?" she asked. Max gasped. "The basketball giant," he said, his voice full of excitement. He had seen clips of Shaq on TV, towering over other players and making slam dunks look easy. Lily nodded too, though she was more interested in the neat handwriting on the napkin. "Yes," Maria said softly, smiling at their reaction. "He came into the diner today. I served him, and before he left, he wrote me this note." She read the words aloud, her voice steady but emotional. When she finished, There was silence for a moment. Then Lily reached across the table and touched her mom's hand. "See, Mommy? Even famous people know you're the best." Maria's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were happy tears. She hugged her children tightly, holding them as if she would never let go. "I don't know if I'm the best," she said, "but I promise I'll always try to be the best mom for you." That night, after tucking her children into bed, Maria sat alone on the couch with the napkin in her hand. She thought about the struggles she had faced, the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the quiet moments of fear when she didn't know if she could pay the bills. All those times she had told herself to keep going suddenly felt validated. Someone had noticed. Someone had reminded her she wasn't invisible. Over the next few days, Maria carried the napkin everywhere she went. Whenever work felt overwhelming, she would slip her hand into her pocket, touch the folded paper, and feel her spirits lift. It wasn't about the celebrity status of the man who wrote it. It was about the kindness, the reminder that her efforts mattered, and that she was stronger than she thought. Word began to spread at the diner. Some customers who had been there that day told their friends about how Shaquille O'Neal had stopped by. Soon, people were whispering to Maria, "You served Shaq, didn't you?" She would smile shyly and nod, never bragging but unable to hide her gratitude. Her co-workers teased her good-naturedly, calling her the lucky one, but Maria didn't see it as luck. She saw it as a blessing. One afternoon, as she was serving a family, the father looked at her and said, "I heard what happened with Shaq. That's pretty amazing." Maria smiled politely and said, "Yes, it was a special moment." But inside, she knew it was more than amazing. It was a turning point in how she saw herself. At home, Lily insisted on keeping the napkin in a small picture frame on the kitchen counter. "That way we can always see it," she explained. "Max, proud as ever, told his friends at school, Shaq wrote a note to my mom." Maria laughed when the teacher mentioned that Max had been bragging. She didn't mind. She was glad her children felt proud of her. As days turned into weeks, Maria began to notice something changing inside her. The exhaustion didn't magically disappear, and the financial struggles were still real, but her mindset had shifted. She no longer felt invisible. She carried herself with more confidence, smiling not just for others, but for herself too. The kindness she had received gave her strength, and that strength reflected in how she spoke to her children, how she worked at the diner, and even how she looked at herself in the mirror. She began to dream again, something she hadn't allowed herself to do in years. She thought about saving a little money for night classes, maybe studying something she loved, like education. She wanted to show her kids that even when life is hard, dreams don't have to disappear. Every time she thought of giving up, she remembered Shaq's words, "You are stronger than you think." Those words echoed in her heart, louder than the doubts that had once weighed her down. Maria didn't know if she would ever meet Shaq again. Maybe he would never know the impact he had made on her life with one simple note. But she carried his words like a guiding light, proof that kindness has power far greater than people realize. It doesn't take much to change someone's day, or even their life. And for Maria, a single mom who had felt invisible for so long, that simple act of kindness gave her something she had almost lost hope. The following week passed like many others, with Maria juggling her shifts at the diner and her responsibilities as a mother. But there was one difference: she now carried a quiet strength inside her that others could sense. Her co-workers noticed she smiled more easily, her kids noticed she laughed more at home, and even the regular customers at the diner commented that she seemed brighter. The napkin with Shaquille O'Neal's note had not just given her encouragement for one day, it had planted something deeper inside her. It reminded her that even the hardest struggles carried value because her effort mattered. Still, she often replayed the moment in her mind. She remembered his warm smile, the sincerity in his eyes, and the simple way he had spoken to her as if she were not just a waitress but a person worthy of respect. That memory stayed with her like a favorite song she couldn't forget. She would find herself glancing at the framed napkin in her kitchen each morning before heading to work, whispering to herself, "I am stronger than I think." One Friday afternoon, just as the diner was beginning to slow down after the lunch rush, Maria saw something that made her heart leap. The front door opened, and there he was again, Shaquille O'Neal, ducking slightly to fit through the frame, his presence immediately drawing attention. Gasps and whispers filled the room. Customers pulled out their phones, nudging each other in disbelief. Maria froze for a moment, unsure if she was dreaming. She quickly straightened her apron and hurried toward him, her heart pounding. "Welcome back," she said softly, her face breaking into a smile she couldn't contain. Shaq recognized her instantly and smiled warmly. "Maria. How are you doing?" he asked, his voice carrying genuine excitement. "I'm doing well," she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. "I wasn't expecting to see you again." "Well, I had to come back for those pancakes," he joked, making her laugh. The manager, Mr. Kelly, quickly approached, offering to seat him in a private corner, but Shaq shook his head. "No need for that. I'm good right here." He settled into the same booth as before, making the diner buzz even louder. Maria brought him water, just like last time, and asked if he wanted his usual order. He grinned. "You remember?" "Of course," she said. "Pancakes and the omelette." "Perfect," he replied. As she walked away to place the order, Maria's co-workers whispered excitedly. "He came back for her section again," Jenny said with a smile. "Looks like he remembered you." Maria just shook her head modestly, but inside, her heart was racing. When she returned with his food, Shaq motioned for her to sit for a moment. "Do you have a break soon?" he asked kindly. Maria hesitated. Breaks were rare during busy hours, but Mr. Kelly, overhearing, nodded quickly. "Go ahead, Maria. I'll cover." She slid into the booth across from Shaq, feeling small next to his towering figure but also strangely comfortable. "So," Shaq began, "did you show your kids the note?" Maria's eyes softened. "Yes, I did. They were so excited. My son couldn't stop telling his friends at school." Shaq chuckled. "That's what kids do. That's good. They should be proud of you." Maria bit her lip, fighting back fresh tears. "I don't think I've ever felt so seen before. Your words meant more than you know. Sometimes it feels like I'm invisible, just another tired waitress. But you reminded me that what I do matters." Shaq leaned forward, his expression serious but gentle. "Maria, listen to me. Raising kids on your own? Working long hours to give them a future? That's not invisible. That's one of the strongest things a person can do. Don't ever doubt that." She nodded slowly, his words sinking deep into her heart. For years, she had brushed off her sacrifices as just what needed to be done. But hearing someone validate her efforts gave her a new perspective. Their conversation continued for several minutes, touching on her kids, her dreams, and even the small struggles of daily life. Shaq listened intently, never rushing her, never dismissing her words. He spoke about his own mother, who had raised him with discipline and love, and how much he owed to her sacrifices. "Moms like you," he said firmly, "you're the real MVPs." Maria smiled through her tears, feeling lighter than she had in years. Before long, she had to return to her duties, but Shaq reassured her with a warm nod. "Keep going, Maria. You're doing great." When he finished his meal, Maria brought the check, but once again, he left more than just money. This time, alongside another generous tip, he left a second note. The words were just as powerful: "Maria, believe in your dreams. You deserve more than just survival. Find what makes you shine, for yourself and your kids." Her hand trembled as she read it. Customers around her noticed her reaction, and whispers grew louder. Some people clapped quietly, touched by what they witnessed. But Maria hardly noticed anyone else. All she saw was the napkin in her hand and the message it carried. As Shaq stood to leave, Maria found the courage to say, "Thank you, not just for the note, but for seeing me." He gave her a gentle smile. "Always, Maria. Don't forget you're stronger than you think." With that, he walked out, leaving the diner filled with chatter and amazement. Maria held the new napkin close to her chest. The first note had given her strength, but this one gave her something more: permission to dream again. For so long, she had lived only to survive, pushing her own hopes aside for the sake of her children. But now, she realized that part of giving them a better life meant believing in herself too. That night, when she got home, she placed the second napkin beside the first, framing them both together on the kitchen wall. Her children gathered around, reading the new message with wide eyes. "See, Mommy," Lily said, her voice full of admiration. "He believes in you, just like we do." Max hugged her tightly. "You're our hero, Mommy." Maria's heart swelled. She kissed their heads, whispering, "No, my loves. You're my reason." As she lay in bed later, staring at the framed notes glowing softly in the lamplight, Maria felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She realized that strength wasn't just about enduring hardships. It was also about believing in possibilities, even when life seemed determined to keep you down. And for the first time in a very long time, Maria began to dream not just about surviving another week, but about building a brighter future for her family. Maria woke up the next morning to the sight of the two framed napkins on her kitchen counter. The sunlight filtered through the window and landed directly on them, almost as if the universe wanted her to notice again. She stood there for a while, staring at the handwritten words that had come from a man she never expected to meet. Her heart swelled with gratitude. Those simple sentences had changed the way she looked at herself, and now they served as a reminder to keep moving forward with courage. Her children joined her soon after, still in their pajamas, rubbing their sleepy eyes. "Good morning, Mommy," Lily said, hugging her tightly. Max followed, proudly pointing at the notes on the wall. "Look, Mommy, it's like a trophy." "Shaq gave you a trophy," he declared. Maria laughed softly, kissing his head. "Yes, baby, but the real trophy is you too," she whispered. The day carried on with its usual rhythm, but Maria felt different. She moved through her chores with a lighter spirit, humming softly as she packed lunches and tied shoelaces. At the diner later, she greeted customers with a warmth that felt less forced, more genuine. People had heard about Shaq's visit, and some even asked her to tell the story. Though she felt shy, she shared it with humility, never exaggerating, always focusing on the kindness behind the gesture. One older woman, after hearing it, said gently, "My dear, you've been given a sign. Don't ignore it." Those words stuck with Maria throughout the day. A sign. That was exactly what it felt like. In the weeks that followed, Maria began making small but important changes. She cut back on unnecessary expenses, putting aside a little savings each week. She researched affordable night classes online, remembering the dream she once had of becoming a teacher. It felt almost impossible with her schedule, but she refused to let the idea die this time. Her children noticed her determination. Lily began drawing pictures of her mom standing in front of a chalkboard with the words "Best Teacher" written above. Max, in his playful way, would hand her pretend homework assignments, saying, "Practice for your future class, Mommy." Their support filled her with strength. Meanwhile, the diner continued to buzz with life. Regular customers asked about her kids, and her co-workers rallied around her with encouragement. The note from Shaq had not only lifted Maria's spirits but had also inspired those around her. People began tipping a little more, smiling a little wider, and treating the staff with more kindness. It was as if one man's gesture had rippled through the whole diner. One evening, as Maria was wiping down a table, a young woman approached her. "Excuse me," she said softly, "are you Maria?" When Maria nodded, the woman smiled. I just wanted to say thank you. I read about what happened with Shaquille O'Neal and your story. I'm a single mom too, and I've been feeling so tired and hopeless lately. But when I read your story, I felt like I wasn't alone. You gave me hope. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she hugged the woman. She realized that the kindness shown to her was now spreading to others, giving them hope too. And in that moment, she understood something powerful: sometimes our struggles aren't just for ourselves. Sometimes they become a light for others walking the same path. At home, Maria often reflected on how far she had come in such a short time. The bills still came, her feet still ached after long shifts, and she still worried about her children's future. But the heaviness in her heart was lighter now. She no longer felt invisible. She felt seen, valued, and reminded that even in ordinary places, extraordinary moments can happen. One Sunday afternoon, Maria and her children sat at the kitchen table eating lunch when Max suddenly asked, "Mommy, do you think we'll ever meet Shaq again?" Maria smiled thoughtfully. Maybe. Life is full of surprises. But even if we don't, he's already given us something we'll carry forever. Lily looked at the framed napkins and nodded. He gave us hope, she said simply. Yes, Maria whispered, holding their hands, and hope is the strongest gift anyone can give. As time passed, Maria's life didn't magically transform overnight. But slowly, step by step, she started carving a new path for herself and her children. She enrolled in a part-time evening course, determined to move closer to her teaching dream. It wasn't easy balancing school, work, and motherhood, but each time she felt like quitting, she glanced at the napkins and remembered the words, "You are stronger than you think." Her children became her biggest cheerleaders. They would wait up for her on class nights, eager to hear about what she learned. Their pride filled her with determination. She realized she wasn't just doing this for herself, she was showing her children what resilience looked like. Months later, Maria sat in the diner after a late shift, sipping tea and reflecting on her journey. She thought back to the moment Shaq first walked through those doors, the moment that had seemed so ordinary at first but had turned out to be life-changing. She wondered if he had any idea how deeply his small act of kindness had touched her life and the lives of those around her. She smiled, knowing that maybe he didn't need to know. The beauty of kindness is that its impact often stretches far beyond what we can see. What mattered was that it had sparked something in her, something she had almost lost the belief in herself. Maria leaned back in her chair, tired but peaceful. She looked around the diner, now quiet after closing time, and thought about all the people who had sat in those booths, each carrying their own hidden battles. She understood now, more than ever, that sometimes the simplest gestures, a smile, a kind word, a handwritten note, could change someone's entire outlook on life. At home, when she finally lay down to rest, Maria whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Not just for the notes, but for the reminder that even in her hardest struggles, she had worth. She was not invisible. She was strong. The framed napkins remained in her kitchen, a daily reminder that kindness is powerful, hope is real, and strength often appears when we least expect it. And though she didn't know what the future held, Maria felt ready to face it, not with fear, but with courage. Her story, which began with exhaustion and invisibility, had turned into one of hope and resilience. All because one man, larger than life, took a moment to notice her heart. And as Maria drifted to sleep that night, she realized something beautiful: sometimes heroes don't wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they wear a simple smile and write a few kind words on a napkin that changes everything.